Neville Goddard said something that sounds almost cruel the first time you hear it. The person who hurt you is not a person. What if the one you have been waiting on for years, the one who broke something in you and never came back to make it right, was never standing outside your life at all? By the end of this video, you will understand why that apology cannot arrive and why that is the best news you have heard in a long time. There is a particular kind of wound that does not close on its own. It is the one left by someone who hurt you and never accounted for it. You keep a private ledger. You rehearse the moment they finally understand what they did, the look on their face, the words you would say back. And while you wait for that reckoning, the waiting quietly runs your life. It sets your mood in the morning. It decides who you can trust. It sits in the room during conversations that have nothing to do with them. Everyone around you has an opinion about this wound. Set a boundary, hold them accountable, forgive them when you are ready so you can finally move on. Notice that every one of those instructions keeps the other person at the center of your healing. Each of them makes your peace depend on someone who may never change, may never notice, may already be gone. Neville's teaching does something no boundary and no timeline can do. It removes that person from the equation entirely.
The principle has a name, and Neville stated it flatly in his lectures. Everyone is you pushed out. Not a metaphor, not a mood you try on when you feel generous, a claim about what other people are. If the world you perceive is your own consciousness turned outward, then every face in it is a face of yours. The kind stranger, the difficult boss, the friend who betrayed you. All of them are your own states of consciousness externalized, pushed out into human form and handed back to you to look at. Take that claim seriously for 1 minute and follow where it goes. The person who hurt you is not out there. They are a state of yours, wearing a face. Whatever they did to you, they did as an expression of the state you were occupying when you met them. They came out of you the way an image comes out of a projector, and you have spent years arguing with the screen. This is Neville's word, and it matters that we use his word. He did not say people are like your consciousness or that they reflect your energy. He said they are you, pushed out. In The Law and the Promise, published in 1961, he built a whole book out of ordinary people whose relationships reordered themselves the moment the inner state was revised, never before. The other person was the last thing to change because the other person was never the thing that needed changing. Before we go into the hard part, I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually answer it in the comments. Think of the one person you have not forgiven. Not the story of what they did, just the state you are in whenever their name comes up. Give it a name in a short phrase, first person, something like, "It was a state of mine." Leave that phrase below. You will understand what it means by the end.
Here is where it stings. If the person who hurt you is a state of yours pushed out, then what you cannot forgive in them is almost always something you recognize. Look closely at the thing they did that you replay the most. The coldness, the cruelty, the carelessness that treated you as if you did not matter. Now ask, honestly, whether that state is a stranger to you. Most of the time it is not. The exact quality you condemn in them lives in you too. In some form you keep at a safe distance. You have been cold to someone. You have been careless with someone who deserved better. You have looked away from a person who needed you. Seeing that state in another human being, exteriorized and aimed at you, makes it unbearable in a way it never is when it is your own. This is why the resentment has such a grip. It is not really outrage at a stranger. It is you looking at a state of yourself and hating it in another shape, at a distance where you never have to admit it is yours. The distance is the whole trick. It is far more comfortable to be the wounded party than to notice that the wound and the one who dealt it are cut from the same cloth. Neville was not being poetic when he pushed people toward this. He was being precise. As long as you keep them cast as the villain out there, you keep your attention fixed on the exact state that produced the injury. You keep it alive, you feed it, and a state that is fed does exactly what every state does. It reproduces its own likeness.
In 1944, Neville published a short book called Feeling is the Secret. The whole teaching rests on one idea: feeling is the creative ground, after its own kind. Apply that to resentment, and something cold clicks into place. A state of resentment is not a passive record of the past. It is an active seed. Held long enough, it does what feeling always does. It reproduces its own likeness in your world. It arranges new versions of the same injury, new people who let you down in the same specific way, new situations that confirm the story that you are the one things get done to. You have probably noticed this pattern in your own life and blamed it on bad luck or on a type you keep attracting. Neville would say there is no type out there. There is a state in here, and the state keeps casting the same play with new actors. The betrayer changes faces. The feeling of being betrayed stays exactly where you planted it, and it goes on hiring. So the resentment is not just painful, it is generative. Every day you spend replaying what they did, you are not processing the wound, you are watering it. You are keeping the exact feeling alive that guarantees you will meet it again. The past you refuse to release quietly becomes the future you keep receiving, delivered by strangers who look nothing like the first one and feel exactly like them.
Once you see the state as the source, two of the most common escape routes stop working. The first is the apology. You want them to come back, understand, admit it, take it from you. But you already know why that fails on its own terms. Even when the apology comes, and most of the time it never does, it does not touch the state. People report feeling hollow after the apology they waited a decade for. The words land, and the feeling is still there, because the feeling was never in their hands. The second exit is the one the whole culture recommends. Forgive them, rise above it, grant them the moral favor of your pardon so you can move on. This one feels noble, and it fails for a subtler reason. It still leaves the power with the other person. You are the one bending down to release someone who wronged you. The story is intact. There is still a villain and a victim, and you have simply decided to be generous with the villain. Notice what both of these have in common. They keep the other person as the center of the transaction. The apology asks them to change. The pardon asks you to change your posture toward them. In both, the person who hurt you is real, external, and in charge of whether you are free. As long as that is the frame, your peace is hostage to someone outside you. Neville's law will not let you keep that frame. If they are a state of yours pushed out, there is no one out there to apologize and no one out there to pardon. There is only the state, and the state is yours, which means, for the first time, the exit is on your side of the door.
Neville gave the exit a specific name: revision. It is the deliberate act of returning, in imagination, to the scene that wounded you, and living it again as it should have been. You keep the memory. You change what happens inside it. You do not argue with the old version. You replace it, from the inside, until the new one carries the weight the old one used to carry. Here is the mechanics of it, the way Neville taught it. You settle the body towards sleep, into the drowsy stillness he called sats, the state akin to sleep, the threshold where imagination impresses without resistance. You bring the scene up, and then you revise it. You see the person behaving as you wish they had. You feel the exchange as warmth instead of injury. You stay inside that revised scene until it feels natural, until the tone of it becomes the tone you carry. What you are doing is not rewriting history for its own sake. You are changing the state you perceive that person from. The memory was never neutral. You have been perceiving them from inside a state of injury, and that state is what you meet every time their name comes up. Revision goes upstream of the feeling and changes the water at the source. If this is landing, subscribe before we go further. There is a lot more of this work here, and it builds. Now let me say plainly what revision does to forgiveness, because it dissolves the word and rebuilds it into something you can actually use.
Forgiveness, in the ordinary sense, is a concession. You grant it to someone who, by your own account, does not deserve it. That is why it is so hard and why it so often fails. You are trying to force a feeling of release toward a person while the state that holds them as guilty is still fully intact underneath. The mouth forgives, the body keeps the file open. Revision rebuilds the word from the ground up. Forgiveness stops being something you do to them and becomes something you do to yourself, performed on a person. You are changing the state from which you are perceiving them. When the state changes, there is no hook left, because there is no longer a version of them hanging on it.
This is the difference between the two moves. Ordinary forgiveness says, they did a terrible thing and I choose to release them anyway. Revision says, I am going to change the state I am seeing them from, and when I do, the terrible thing has nothing left to stand on. One requires you to be endlessly generous toward an enemy. The other requires you to correct something in yourself for your own sake, and the enemy quietly disappears in the process. Neville was relentless on this point because he understood the trap. Every teaching that keeps the other person guilty keeps you chained to them. You cannot be free from someone you are still busy condemning. The condemnation is the chain. Revision is you refusing to stay in the state that hurts, regardless of what they deserve.
Go back to the mirror for a moment, because this is the part that turns accusation into responsibility. What you cannot forgive in them is a state you are looking from. That is worth saying twice. You are not just looking at their cruelty. You are looking at it from inside a state of your own, and that state is what colors everything you see when you think of them. Neville taught that a man is a series of states he moves through, and while he occupies a state, he sees the whole world through it. Occupy the state of the betrayed, and every memory of that person confirms the betrayal. The evidence is overwhelming, and it is overwhelming because the state is selecting it. Change the state, and a different set of facts about that same person becomes visible, facts that were always there. This is about noticing that the version of them you carry is assembled by the state you carry them in. You are not remembering them neutrally. You are perceiving a projection built out of your own feeling and then holding the projection responsible for how you feel. That loop can run for a lifetime. Most people let it run right to the end. The way out of the loop is to change the state you occupy so that the person the state was projecting simply is not there to meet anymore. You cannot argue your way to this. You can only assume a different state and let it do what states do, which is to reorganize everything you see. Let me be honest about why people refuse this, because the refusal is understandable and it is expensive. There is a real satisfaction in keeping the villain. The story of what they did to you organizes your pain into something clean. There is a wronged party, and it is you, and that is a position with a strange comfort in it. It makes you innocent. It explains why your life looks the way it does. Neville's law takes that comfort away, and it takes it away on purpose. If everyone is you pushed out, you cannot keep a permanent villain without keeping the state that produces him. The price of the innocence is the wound. You get to be the one it was done to, and in exchange, you keep living from the exact state that guarantees it happens again. That is the trade, and most people take it without ever seeing the receipt. Look at what it actually costs. Every relationship you enter carries the state in. Every new person is met by someone half-braced for the old injury, and the bracing invites the very thing it fears. The story keeps you safe from ever being surprised by love or trust, and it keeps you exactly where the wound was. Innocence is expensive when the currency is your future. The alternative is harder to swallow at first and lighter to carry after. You give up being the one it was done to. You accept that the state was yours, that the person was your consciousness pushed out, and that the correction is yours to make. It feels, in the moment, like taking on blame. It is the opposite. It is taking back the only power that was ever going to free you. So here's the work, concretely, so you can actually do it tonight. Choose the person, not the abstract concept of everyone who ever wronged you. One specific person, one specific scene. The one whose name still changes your body when you hear it. That charge is the marker that the state is still live, and a live state is exactly the one that answers to revision. Get quiet. Let the body settle into sats, the drowsy stillness near sleep, where imagination impresses without resistance. Bring the scene up. Then, deliberately, revise it. See them speak the words you needed. Feel the moment carry warmth instead of injury. Do not narrate it from outside. Be in it, first person, until the revised version feels as real as the original used to feel. Then stay there, past the point of comfort. The first pass will feel fake, and that is not a sign it is failing. That is the old state resisting, because the old state has been fed for years, and this is the first meal it has missed. Return the next night, and the one after. You are changing which state you occupy when that person appears, and repetition is how a state becomes your natural home. You will know it is working not by a dramatic feeling, but by an absence.
One day their name comes up and the body does not change. The charge is gone. There is nothing to defend and nothing to rehearse. That quiet is not you forgetting. It is you having revised the state, and with the state gone, the person the state was projecting is gone with it.
Something strange happens on the other side of this work, and Neville documented it in ordinary people throughout the Law and the Promise. The person you meet afterward, in memory and sometimes in the flesh, is no longer the one who hurt you. Not because they apologized, not because they earned it, because they never were anyone but you pushed out, and you changed the state they were coming from. This is the whole thing, stripped down. The wound felt like it was about them. It was always about the state you were perceiving them from. The apology could never close it, because the apology was aimed at the wrong door. The moral forgiveness could never close it, because it left them guilty and you chained. Only revision reaches the actual source, which was never out there in the first place. You have been waiting for someone to come back and make it right. Let me tell you who that someone is. It is you revising the state, doing on yourself the work you thought was theirs to do. The person who hurt you is a state of yours. The one who can end it is the same one who has been carrying it, and that person is finally, fully in the room. If this reached something in you, subscribe and stay for the rest of this work. And tell me below whose name changed your body when I said all this, and what state you are choosing to revise it into.